Good morning once again. Cloud, I'm sure, is a very interesting topic for all of us in the industry. And this was obviously the topic of conversation that we had on the panel 2 evenings ago. If I had a choice to rename the title, I would have called it Cloud is Evolutionary and Disruptive. Right? Because cloud is not something that's just revolutionary that just happened. It didn't spring to life just in the recent past. It's been evolving over a period of time. So I'm going to share over the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to share our point of view at CtrlS in terms of what we think about cloud and why we think it's disruptive and what are the implications for each one of us sitting here, not just the CIOs, each one of you are, your IT organizations, but it's going to have an impact on the businesses that you support, businesses like ours who are service providers. It's also going to have an impact on the OEMs, the system integrators, the ISVs, and the entire IT industry as such. All the building blocks that are part of the IT industry are all going to be impacted. So that's the point of view that I'm going to share over the next few minutes with you. So I will start with the assertion that I just said, cloud is a disruptive force. Why? What makes it disruptive? Because it's going to change the dynamics within a business. In terms of the IT demand and supply, the business demands services from the IT organization, and how IT is going to respond to that, that's going to change. That dynamic is going to change, right? And there are certain ways, here are certain ways how IT delivers those services, how business processes. Today the business processes are monolithic. They're large, they're not broken up. Even the applications, whether it's ERP or any other application that's deployed, complex applications that are deployed within organizations, they support these chunky processes. But the way those processes are going to be automated in the future is going to be different. IT organizations, the way they're going to function going forward, the way the applications are built, deployed, supported, all of that is going to change. Right? IT today either sources them from elsewhere, integrates, etc., etc. Those would be all cloud sourcing going forward. The economic value, how you determine value, how you measure that value. Today, we'll talk in the next few slides. CIOs, I think one of the pressure points on CIOs and the expectations for CIOs is how do you optimize costs, right? And how cloud is going to help in optimizing that, as well as meeting the expectations of business to be always on business, right? And also how the governance, the risk and compliance are managed, all of this is going to be impacted as well. But one of the things that I need to highlight here as a bullet is what I just said earlier. Not just for the IT organizations and the businesses who consume the IT services. Cloud is going to be disruptive in the way it's going to impact data centers, ISVs, OEMs who provide all the hardware, whether it's networking, servers, storage, etc., etc. Because definitely because the brands are probably going to be irrelevant at that point where the cloud is going to be pervasive, where no one cares as to what hardware is underneath, what storage device, what brand is being supporting the services, because the consumers are only going to care about what they're consuming and how reliable that is and what it's going to cost them, right? And how it's going to address the compliance and the regulatory and so on. Those kinds of criteria are going to be more important. Now let's look as to what a cloud is. I know we heard various definitions of the cloud. We heard things like cloud is a journey, cloud is a business model, cloud is probably technology for some. But our take is cloud is, I agree with one of the opinions that was expressed the other day. Cloud is a model of computing. It's a paradigm. It's not a technology from our perspective. Cloud is a model where how it's going to fulfill the demands from a business point of view. It's about delivering those business capabilities. That's what a cloud is. Okay. Now, how you build a cloud, what is beneath the cloud, irrelevant. Yes, it's a technology, it's important. Yes, it needs to be scalable. And it has to meet the 5 key criteria. It's a service-oriented, so everything's a service. Initially, what we're talking about today is we're talking about IT as a service. We're talking about platform as a service or a software as a service. But going forward, I also see cloud to be delivering either business information as a service or even automating some of the processes as a service, so that if you have a process or a set of processes end-to-end within a business, each of these can be sourced. The IT brings all these services together and integrates them. Cloud is also, what we expect is it's scalable dynamically and it's elastic, just like a rubber band that can be stretched. When the load goes up, it just expands, and then dynamically it can shrink as well as your load goes down. It's a shared environment, so it's not something that, and when we say shared, it doesn't necessarily have to be public clouds, right? It can be private as well within an enterprise. Globally, you can be using this if you're a global organization. And they're metered by usage, and of course, the internet technologies are a fundamental foundation on which it's built. Now, having looked at the definition broadly, which some of us may agree and some of us may not, what is under the cloud? What are the key components of the cloud? I mean, I could put a pretty picture here, but these are some of the fundamental building blocks, you can say. For a cloud to be what we perceive and what we see it function like, it has a self-service portal. There is a service catalog from which a user or a consumer can choose what kind of services they would like to choose and what price point they're going to be providing. There are appliances or templates. There are appliances and templates that can be chosen so that if you want to deploy a particular architecture or if you want to deploy a certain application or an appliance, the user has a choice to choose from. Virtualization is one of the important components of the cloud. Some are under the belief, under the wrong belief. Some are under the wrong belief that virtualization itself is cloud. It's not. There are some service providers who are taking advantage of that and then sell just virtualization as well. Now, auto provisioning. So everything is provisioned dynamically. There is very little need for human intervention. Once a business user or an end user chooses something. Monitoring is also an important element because it needs to be monitored as to the health and the availability and other parameters, which is very critical. That's going to trigger the auto scaling or the elasticity capabilities because based on the usage, based on how the cloud is functioning, the auto scaling can be kicked in. Billing and billing, of course, and not every cloud does need to have the last one that I'm talking about here, the services interface. It all depends upon the purpose and who the end users of the cloud are, right? That's going to be important. So if you look at the components, right, the underlying components, all of these have been in existence for a while, right? Do you see anything which is revolutionary or which just dropped in out of the sky or the blue just recently? No. All of these have been there in existence, in use, for a long time. Some of these probably for even more than 2 decades. Right? Now, we have to, and why do I say that? We have to go back at least 15 years since the beginning of the internet era. Right? And I've been very much part of this journey, right, from the 90s, and I'm sure some of you might have been part of that journey as well. So if you go back and think, or in the memory lane, 95 to 2000, what exactly happened? 95, I remember, even in Wall Street, which is always has been in the cutting edge of technology adoption or IT adoption, right? Companies were still struggling to figure out how to use the web, what to do. They were building static websites, web pages, not even dynamic ones, right? 96, I was part of the financial services world where we were building dynamic content integration, etc., and building services in an e-commerce model, more from a B2B, in a B2B way. And then I was also part of the journey where banks were dealing with security concerns, just the way we are talking about security in the cloud. We were talking about e-banking back in the late 90s, and we were addressing the same challenges that we are talking about in the cloud today. Scalability. How do you take your legacy systems and expose them so that now all of a sudden you have a global reach? Right? So what happened between 95 and 2000 is it brought about various new models of business models came into existence. B2B, B2C. Obviously the B2C has caught on like a wildfire. The Amazons, the eBays, etc., came into existence. And even in the business world, for example, there was a bank which was a purely internet banking model called S1 Bank. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. At Anderson Consulting, when I was part of that, we were partnering with S1 Bank to basically take that technology and kind of start integrating that with several other leading banks in the world. So what happened was the drivers were back in that era. E-business, how do I reach to my expanded customer base across the world? I don't need to be there everywhere in the world, but I can have global reach instantly, right? And of course, what happens from the IT perspective? The IT organizations openly welcomed, adopted, or they were forced to adopt in some cases, the web protocols. They had to address the security challenges that were the perception of that thing, right? And the scale and performance was built in the back end. The scalability existed at either the web layer, the multi-architecture concept scale adopted, right? The scalability was either the web layer or the middleware layer or on the back end, right? Of course, we talked about the global reach and the different business models involved. Now, cloud 2, if you look at it, what happened in the last 10 years, right from 2000, the dot-com boom came to an end, right? After that, we had the World Trade Center incident, as well as all the terrorist events, and we had global economic cycles go. We went into minor recessions and major recessions worldwide, including the one in 2007, 2008, right? The whole bubble kind of came to a bust. So all those have put pressure on the business and IT as well in terms of how do you deliver more for less, spend less. Where are you going to save money for the business? Now, how is the business? It just became important for business to get things done cheaper and faster. So what makes the cloud disruptive? So far we have seen the technology under the hood, etc., and then we are saying it's nothing new, nothing revolutionary, it's been all there. So what makes it revolutionary? And we looked at Cloud 1, the 95 to 2000, 2002 so far. Of course, virtualization came in to help us reduce those costs, etc., so that we reduce the server sprawl, etc., and the underutilized infrastructure investments that are being made. The infrastructure utilization, so I think, based on studies, is about 5 to only 20%. Okay, so let's look at the dynamics within the business between the IT and the business based on the supply and demand. It's always a balancing act for the CIOs in terms of there's always the demand which is always growing or exceeding based on the changing dynamics or changing. Okay, so what's happening with what has always been the business expectations? Business always wants the differentiated capabilities delivered so that they have a competitive advantage in the market, and they want the business to be uninterrupted. Every dollar that is invested or given to IT should have a meaningful ROI, right? More for less, faster time to market, and compliance and regulatory as well. Now, what does IT do typically? IT primarily says, okay, I have a IT strategy aligned to the business, I have a roadmap. So unless the business, whatever the business expectations come out of the roadmap for that fiscal year, I can't even get things done. There are a lot of processes, including governance to delivery and operations and whatnot. And then my organization is structured as silos based on technologies, whether it's Center of Excellence or a SBU aligned one. And then I have all this work and kind of deliver some value. And there is always a disconnect between the value that IT thinks they're delivering versus what the business thinks they're expecting, right? Now, so where are we today? We have seen evolution. We have talked about the dynamics within the organization. Where are we today? Where we are is IT is under pressure to optimize cost, right? IT and all the CIOs are focused more on building new capabilities, whether it's business intelligence or etc. And CIOs, I'm sure, based on my conversations with some in the industry, are under pressure to also come out with a thought leadership in terms of, what is this cloud? How is cloud going to help the business, right? What is the roadmap? Should we even go in that journey? What can we migrate to the cloud? How do we leverage it, and so on, right? And the business is basically, that's what we just talked about. Business basically thinks IT is not delivering enough. And I've been in organizations where I've seen businesses build 900 applications locally around the world because they felt IT wasn't delivering enough. 900 applications that can just be hidden. Okay. Now, so what are some of the drivers for the cloud as we define it today? And all this interest that is generated in the market, what is driving that? If we look at that and what's happening around the world, including India itself, even the system integrators, the IT outsourcing companies that we have known to work in a certain business model today are changing their own business models. TCS, for example, wants to bring in their core banking application and offer it as a SaaS model. Okay? So there are several system integrators who are looking at things. There are several ISVs that we are talking to as well, who are looking at making their applications multi-tenant as well as bringing them to the cloud so that they can start servicing them. Most applications today are built on a single tenant model. So ISVs are looking at how do I make this overnight into a multi-tenant architecture. Changing that is going to be very expensive. So how do I make it multi-tenant? And service providers, when I say service providers, it's not just folks like us. It's also the system integrators. It's the other kind of service providers. What they're looking at is what are the applications or what are the platforms, etc., that we can bring on this platform, cloud platform, that can be delivered. IT, the role as IT's role as I see evolve or will be forced to evolve into, is going to be more of someone who is going to source it, just the way IT is used to going to the system integrators, etc., to source services. We'll be sourcing ready-made components or ready-made services that can be consumed, integrated, and delivered so that IT still stays relevant. Just the example that I just gave you, if IT doesn't deliver, business will get things done under the table. Here is X dollars out of my marketing budget. I want this done because my IT doesn't deliver it. Can I get it done? I'm ready to install, ready to use that, right? So business will respond that way unless IT steps in. And when so many other service providers who are going to offer services on a SaaS model, on a ready-to-consume usage-based model, and IT typically the way it delivers, I need 9 months, 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months to deliver this at this cost. Business will probably have less and less patience once they start seeing other service providers offer this. Here is something that you can consume right away, no capex. You just pay me as you use it. Right? That is the single most driver that we see that's going to change the fundamentals, not just for the IT organizations, not just for the CIOs. It's going to change the fundamentals for every single player. System integrator, ISV, data centers, name it, everyone is going to be impacted by this dynamic. Right? So the first revolution, cloud one, or evolution, impacted the consumers. It was more of the consumers getting used to, it was businesses getting access to global consumer base. The second one was more about cost optimization and so on. Now, where we are struggling as to what is cloud, how do we deploy it, how do we leverage it, etc. What's going to drive the future is, it's the business consuming these services, that's going to be the key driver. Thank you.